Our next speaker is a true legend in her field, and it is our honor and privilege to welcome her here. Looking at her various achievements makes one wish that we had done a bit more. I now would like to call on Mrs. Arlene Pietranton, the chairperson of ASAE. Arlene is a PhD, a CAE, and serves as the Chief Executive Officer of the American Speech, Language, and Hearing Association. Before working here, she was on the staff of the George Washington University Medical Center in Washington, D.C., where she held several clinical and administrative positions. She is an ASHA Fellow and the past president of the District of Columbia Speech, Language, Hearing Association. She is also the chairperson of the ASAE Board of Directors. Arlene is very active in the American Society of Association Executives and has collaborated with association executives throughout North America, Europe, Australia, Asia on association management and governance. I introduce Mrs. Arlene. Please come up, Arlene.
Thank you so much. What a lovely introduction. I appreciate it very much.
Say the questions yourself if you'd like.
I would be happy to. Thank you. So we're conferring up here to say that I'm hoping that I will be able in the next 30 minutes to cover the information that I'd like to share with you, and to do so in a way where we'll have some time at the end for any questions or comments. So please, if there are any, know that they would be welcomed. So first of all, I really appreciate the opportunity to be here. This is my first time to India. So I am excited about the things I will get to see and learn, and I'm very much appreciative for the opportunity to spend this day and a half with all of you. As was mentioned, one of the great pleasures I've had in my role this past year as chairperson of the American Society of Association Executives has been the opportunity to travel to some other parts of the world and to learn with and from colleagues who are active with associations in other parts of the world. There are some ways in which we are different, and there are many more ways in which we are similar in terms of the things that we strive to do, the way that we are engaged in helping to make our communities, our countries, our society a better, safer, smarter place, and the ways that we are committed to our missions and to trying to accomplish those missions. And I'm going to focus some of my comments now on ways that we try to work to meet the needs of our members. We know that's a constantly evolving opportunity and challenge. So here's just a very quick overview. We're going to talk a little bit about who we are. I'm going to talk about some highlights of a couple of recent studies that have been conducted by the American Society of Association Executives. There's a lot of wisdom and that comes from experience. I think there's also important insights that comes from taking a data-based approach, a research-based approach to looking at how associations function. So I'll be sharing some information with you there that I think helps to frame some of the conversations that we'll be having this afternoon and tomorrow. I'll talk just very briefly about association change. I was so pleased this morning when William and I, who just met yesterday for the first time, kicked us off with some very insightful comments about the importance of change. And then I'm going to share with you what I see as these two broad categories of takeaways in terms of this research. I don't think it'll be particularly new information, but I hope it will be reinforcing information for some of the things that we as association leaders need to be focused on. So first of all, if you'd bear with me in terms of the who we are, before I tell you a little bit about where I'm coming from with my association experience and just a little bit about ASAE, I'd like to know a little bit more about you. I've had the opportunity to meet many of you so far, and I hope to meet all of you by the time we wrap up tomorrow. But can you help me out just a bit? How many of you who are here are association leaders who are volunteers in your respective organizations? Thank you. How many of you are association leaders because you are a staff person in your association? Thank you. How many would say that your association is a trade association? Okay. And how many would say that your association is an individual membership or a professional society organization? Excellent. So lots of mix and lots of diversity here, which is what we see in the U.S. as well and in most other parts of the world. And then in terms of the age of your associations, how many of your associations are over 10 years old? Okay, now keep your hands up. How many are over 25 years old? How many are over 50 years old? And how many are over 100 years old? Okay, so we have quite a continuum, and we have a few very mature organizations here, so congratulations on your staying power. So one thing that I think we all have in common is that we all have members. Is that correct? Okay. Our members may be organizations, they may be companies, they may be individuals, but we all have organizations, and we all exist to achieve our mission, and engaging our members effectively, understanding their needs and engaging them is so essential to our missions. So let me continue on and tell you a little bit about who I am and where I'm coming from. So you know that I am currently serving as chairperson of the American Society of Association Executives. For those of you who may not be familiar with ASAE, it's an organization that was founded in 1920, so we're coming up soon on our 100th year, and we'll be able to raise our hand as being 100 or more years old, joining those of you who already have reached that milestone. ASAE is an organization that is based in Washington, D.C., and as you can see, it has about 22,000 members. That represents a little over 11,000 organizations. ASAE's members are in the United States and 50 countries. So that's my role. Those of you who raised your hand as volunteer leaders, that's my volunteer activity and leadership role within the association community. My staff leadership role is by virtue of my job with the American Speech Language Hearing Association, which is also based in the Washington, D.C. area. It's an organization that will be 90 years old next year. We have 173,000 members who are audiologists, speech-language pathologists, speech-language hearing scientists, and our members are, excuse me, primarily in the United States because language and communication is so culturally based. However, we have very active relationships with our counterparts in many, many other countries around the world. ASHA has a staff complement of 270 individuals. We publish scholarly journals, we certify individuals, we accredit graduate programs, we do a lot of advocacy, and we do a lot of professional development for our members to help them to maintain the currency of their knowledge and skills for the services that they're providing. So back just a bit to ASAE. There are many things that all of our associations do. At ASAE, we think about the things that we do in these 4 areas: generating and promulgating knowledge, providing learning, professional development opportunities, advocating, influencing decisions, public policy, and community, the opportunity to gather as we are here face-to-face, as well as to connect through a variety of virtual means. I want to focus a bit on the ASAE Foundation, which this year is celebrating its 50th anniversary, so it's an entity that has existed for a while. This foundation is the arm of the American Society of Association Executives that engages in, that is currently focused on engaging in research on behalf of the association community. Now, much of the work is focused on the American association community, but ASAE is very involved in and very committed to the association field in general. So much of the information that's coming out of these studies by the ASAE Foundation, I think you'll find relevant to dilemmas, opportunities that you're facing in your associations. And I want to underscore the value for all of us who come from a scientific perspective, all of us who understand the importance of research, that it's important to certainly be familiar with the wisdom and the information that comes from common practices, established practices, and experience, but to also really be looking for the knowledge and information that comes from research when there's data to inform our thinking. And that's the role that I find the ASAE Foundation playing in a very different way in recent years. So in the time that I have available today, I'm going to focus my comments on a couple of recent research studies by the ASAE Foundation. One is going to talk about some converging trends that are affecting the world we're operating within and therefore influencing expectations and behaviors of our members. I think these trends will either reinforce things that you're aware of or perhaps bring some new insights. Hopefully there'll be some provocative ideas that will come out of this, and I think it will help to frame the conversations that we'll be having in our panels for the rest of this Congress. Okay. So The purpose of these studies was threefold. One was to look at what disruptive activities or innovations relative to affiliation, whether we call it membership, subscription, affiliation, customer, what kinds of things are happening relative to options for affiliation. The second is how our engagement behaviors, people who are our members, our affiliates, our customers, who are subscribing to our products and services, what are their engagement behaviors that we need to be mindful of as we think about how our organizations can be successful, and what is the nature of community? And community has been such a key part of the role of associations for a very long time. So how is that changing? As I said, there were 4 studies. We could take literally all of this Congress to talk in detail about the findings of those 4 studies. We're not going to be able to do that, but I'm happy to provide information or links and resources to any of you who are interested in knowing more about these studies. I want to focus on 2 of the studies in particular. That second one in green in terms of the realities, the new realities that are resulting as a result of these trends. And then the one on the number 4, the one in blue, in terms of some of the insights about innovations in member engagement that have occurred. There we go. So I'm going to take the liberty of focusing on some of my slides and going just sort of quickly on some of these others. I wasn't sure what would be the best focus. I wanted to, coming into the Congress, having spoken with some of the other presenters and panelists, I know there'll be opportunities to talk about some of these other items. So I'm going to skip over this slide if you'll bear with me. As I prepare to talk with you about the insights on those trends from the New Reality Study, I want to pause for just a moment and reinforce part of the message that we heard this morning from William in terms of change. Leading and managing change, I believe, is one of the most important skill sets for individuals in our roles with associations. I think it may also be true of any organization that you have a leadership role with, but I know it's true in the association community. If you think about it for just a moment, one of the few constants that is true is change. There is always going to be change. So it's important for us to be thoughtful about what's driving that change and how do we lead and manage it so that we are helping to determine to the fullest extent that we can what that future that is emerging, what is it going to look like? So there are many different models. William shared some with us today, earlier today. There are many different models in terms of leading and managing change. One that I would encourage you, if you're not familiar with, to take a look at, because I think you'll find it to be very, very practical, is Kotter's 8 change phase. So it's listed here, these 8 phases of change. It comes out of a lot of study that has been done. And if you follow these 8 changes, these 8 phases of change, it will dramatically increase the likelihood of success. So I mention it here just as a resource for you to be thoughtful about. Okay, these are the 6 trends that I'd like to talk briefly about. And again, I'd ask you to think about these to help frame some of the conversations that we're going to be having over the next day and a half. And as you think about things that you're probably experiencing in your own organizations. So just briefly, the first one is labor market and economic impacts. We know, as we stand here today in 2014, that the last several years, the last 4, 5, 6 years, have been years of some significant economic challenge in all of our countries and across the world. They've been much higher than usual. There's been spikes in levels of unemployment. The overall earning power across different countries has been relatively flat. So the impact that has that we need to be thinking about is, what does that mean in terms of individuals and organizations who are our members and our potential members? They may have less financial resources to draw on in terms of joining and remaining affiliated with our organizations, and the way that they engage with us, the conferences that they choose to come to, the products and services that they are able to pay for may be different than what it has been in the past, because there is less money available for them. Some economists have dubbed this as the lost decade in terms of earning power. We also know that there are some differences across generations. Not each generation has the same birth rate. So, and in different parts of the world, this plays out differently. But I know in the U.S., for example, we have this generation of baby boomers who are now approaching retirement, beginning to retire and retiring out of the workforce, being followed by what we call Gen X. Gen X is 11% smaller. So for every 10 individuals who retire, there are, from the baby boomer generation, there are only 9 individuals in the Gen X who are prepared to come into the workforce. So what does that mean in terms of individuals who are coming into your fields, who are coming into your organizations, and who can participate and affiliate with your association? The second significant converging trend is the blurring of sector boundaries. For a long, long time, associations have really had a very almost exclusive role in terms of being mission-driven, in terms of benefit to society, in terms of some of the altruistic things that we stood for. Well, and I think this is a good thing, but it creates a real challenge for us in terms of our role in making this world a better, safer, smarter place. Many corporate entities, many for-profit entities are also now committed to doing good things for society. It's become part of their corporate values, it's become part of their marketing messages, and that's a good thing for our world, for our society. But it does create some challenges for us because that role that we had that distinguished us from that for-profit world is beginning to blur. Also, there are significantly increased expectations of newer generations that any organization, for-profit or not-for-profit, is involved in doing things that make a difference in a positive way, that help to make this a better world. I know I'm touching on these trends just very, very broadly, very briefly, but bear with me because I do want to get through all of them. So another of the trends is technology and co-creation. How many of you, I didn't bring my phone up with me, but how many of you have a smartphone in your hand or in your pocket somewhere? Just about almost all of us do. The opportunity that creates for us to be able to be connected with other people and with knowledge and information is amazing. I'm told that the access to computer power that we have in our iPhones is greater than what the astronauts had who landed on the moon. So it's an amazing access to information that we have. Again, that's a role that our associations traditionally have played, providing access to information. So if members don't need us to do that for them in the way that they needed it before, how do we change the way that we approach accessing information, managing information, curating information, and how do we engage people who have the opportunity to be involved by picking up their phone, their handheld device, and connecting with folks in any number of different networks? How do we make sure that the networking that we provide is of great value? Volunteerism and civic engagement. Again, there are some significant changes in terms of the interest among people in wanting to be involved, wanting to engage, wanting to help make a difference. And that's been a role that has tended to be one where our organizations have really taken a lead. So how do we rethink our role at a time when folks can participate and are participating in town meetings and being involved in self-formed groups to engage in a cause or to help make a difference? How do we rethink our role as associations? Demographic shifts. So we know that, one, people who are growing up today, folks who are in the early stages of their career, and I'd like to think of myself as one of those, but I realize I'm not, have different experiences and different expectations than those of us who've been working in the workforce for 20, 30, 40 years. There's different level of interconnectedness. There's different levels of appreciating and valuing and championing diversity. There's different experiences, either virtually or in person, connecting around the world. And the interest in being able to do that as part of one's work experience and as part of one's volunteer experience is quite different than it was for many of us when we were entering these roles with our professions, with our organizations, our companies, and with our associations. So how do we make that a strong advantage for our organizations? How do we take advantage of different perspectives on time and place? The traditional expectation around volunteering that many of us in this room, I think, are familiar with, where you volunteer for a term or you volunteer sometimes on a lifetime basis, where you take on a leadership role that will lead, one role leads to another, versus the opportunity to virtually agree to take on a task and to collaborate with individuals through some kind of a virtual connection instead of a face-to-face connection. So we need to be mindful about those demographic changes because we want our organizations to continue to thrive, and the ways that people engage as volunteers in leadership roles has changed and is going to continue to change. And then the last of these trends that I want to comment on is that of networking. So again, today's networks aren't bounded by the opportunity to only meet face-to-face. They're not bounded by the opportunity to only drive to a meeting. They are not bounded by the opportunity to only be connected at the same time. We can have asynchronous collaborations. We can communicate with folks virtually. And I would suggest that it's additive. It's not a one or the other. People want to be able to do both. We see there's data to support that there's still great value associated with what we're doing, coming together for a face-to-face meeting. And there's also significant expectations about the ability to be able to connect with folks through online communities. I'm going to touch on that in just a few moments. Online communities, asynchronous communications, a variety of virtual ways to connect. So again, changes in those expectations that we need to be mindful of, because the experience that many of us have had coming into the association community, coming into our professions, into our companies, is not the same as what current and upcoming generations have. So we need to be thoughtful about how do we continue to respect and sustain the expectations of folks who are our current members, and how do we adapt in terms of welcoming and creating opportunities that are appropriate and well matched to the interest and the expectations of incoming generations and members. So on that note, I'm going to shift for the next couple of minutes to a couple of recommendations that came out of these insights and recommendations that came out of these 4 studies. So one is about innovations related to, membership opportunities and types of member engagement. So related to types of member categories, pricing and benefits, recruitment strategies, engagement and onboarding, and some of the outcomes and lessons learned. And again, just to present some initial thoughts about this, because I know on several of our panels we're going to have the opportunity to have deeper conversations. But these comments I'm about to share came out of a study, one of these membership studies that was conducted by a group in the U.S. called Avenue M. So the biggest recommendation and finding is that membership models need to be designed around the needs and interests of the individual. They need to, whether it's a company or an individual person, they really need to be thoughtful about what is it that is going to attract that person, that company, that organization, what's the value that can be provided to them. And it needs to be based around their needs and interests, as opposed to kind of previous models that were more predominant about title or age or role within an organization. So how do we customize this a bit? How do we meet people based upon the needs and the interests that they have, as opposed to saying, all of you who are this kind of professional, or all of you who have this role within your organization. That's a really important insight that we need to be thoughtful about, that membership is less about a transactional exchange of here are our programs, products, and services, and more about how do I segment those? I mentioned to you in my introductory comments, the organization where I work, we have 173,000 members. If I sent information about all of our programs, products, and services to all of those 173,000 members, any given message would not have meaning for probably 2/3, 3/4, maybe 80 or 90%. I need to segment that information. So what do my members who are early in their career need to know? What do my members who work in an educational setting need to know? What do my members in a healthcare setting need to know? What do my members who have an interest in advocacy need to know? What do my members who are interested in pursuing career advancement need to know? So we need to be thinking around how do we identify what those programs, products, and services are, and then how do we communicate them in a way that meets their needs and gives them the information as they need it. In doing that, we need to be thinking about what can members not do for themselves, because if we are only offering things that members could organize and do on their own, what's the unique value of our organizations? Related to that, another of the insights that came out of these studies is, as I just said, that need for segmentation, that need for us to be willing to say, how do we organize the information in a way that helps our members who are deluged with information to understand quickly what is it that we have to offer and how do they access it, those things that are of value and interest to them. And in doing that, how do we create a sense of what we in the United States, I don't know if it's relevant here in India or other parts of the world, but we call creating a buzz. How do we engage members to be champions to other members, for members to help be the ones to carry forward the word? So, for example, in many organizational meetings, many professional gatherings, there'll be members who are attending who will be tweeting information out. So they are in real time sending information about their experience to say, I just learned this, or I just met so-and-so, or I just found out about this resource. So we're engaging members to provide that personal, real-time, real story information. So a member saying to another member, this is relevant and this has value, as opposed to us, the organization, engaging in a lot of marketing to say, this is going to be valuable to you. It has a lot more credibility if it's a colleague, if it's a peer who is helping to share those messages. How many of your organizations have an online community for your members? So I see a few do. So that's a growing trend in associations worldwide from what I've experienced, and that is the opportunity for, members can join LinkedIn, Facebook, so they can connect with whomever they wish. How do we in our organizations create the opportunity and support the opportunity for members to connect with other members and to be able to do so in a way that feels where the participants in the community are vetted, so members know that these individuals or these companies are ones that do have a legitimate interest within the field, and where there can be some protected conversations where they know that they are talking with a group of peers to be able to learn from and with and to gain insights. So online communities have proven to be a very valued opportunity for connections, and again, it's additive. Members in the past, the traditional way was come together in a face-to-face meeting. Now people expect to be able to connect when they have the question, when they have the interest. So how do we help support that? Are in positions of leadership with our organizations really need to be thoughtful about what will it take for the organization to continue to be successful. How do we preserve those things that work well, and how are we open to new ways of doing things? So again, change is one of the few constants that we can all anticipate. There are a variety of trends and issues that form the framework of reality that we are dealing within. Change is something that can, of necessity, can require us to be bold. Sometimes we have to be persistent. It may not happen on the first attempt. We need to be consistent. We also need to be able to communicate clearly and often. We need to have a tolerance level. As you go through some changes, sometimes there's a level of ambiguity along the way. And we need to understand that there are folks who will be naysayers. That's a very common thing when championing change. And we need to be tolerant of them to an extent, but we do need to be consistent about the commitment to finding a way to move ahead. So I mentioned the key takeaways, and in looking at the program for the next day and a half, we're going to talk about this in many of the panels. The value of whether you call it membership or you consider organizations and individuals to be your customers, or you consider them to be people who can affiliate with you, whatever the relationship is, the value that our organizations can provide to individuals, organizations from our respective fields is of paramount importance. In the absence of value, there's little motivation for those organizations, companies, or people to affiliate with us and to retain that affiliation. And then the other key takeaway is engagement. How do we identify those programs, products, services, opportunities for the individuals, for the companies in our field or industry to participate with us? How do we make it as user-friendly to them as possible about what our offerings are and the ways that they can participate, the way that they can avail themselves of those services, the way they can help to co-create those services, the way that they can be engaged with one another. We really need to be very thoughtful about those two areas, the value and the engagement, and I think we have the opportunity over these next day and a half to talk about that in a variety of ways. I like this quote from Benjamin Franklin. He says, "When you're finished changing, you're finished." So you can tell from my comments I have a deep bias that change is something that's a reality. It happens in different ways, at different points in time, different generations. We need to accept that. We need to understand it. We need to embrace it. We need to be very thoughtful about how we help to lead our organizations so that they are relevant, so that they deliver value, and so that they are very flexible and fluid in terms of opportunities for engagement. I want to make just one more comment, and then I'd welcome any questions. Thanks to our organizers at your table. They were very gracious about letting me distribute these flyers. If any of you are interested, this coming March 22nd through 24 in 2015, the American Society of Association Executives will be bringing its conference called Great Ideas Conference. I know several of you have experience with that conference. It's one that's been in place for many years, and this will be the first time that it is taking place outside of the U.S. It will be taking place in Hong Kong, March 22nd through 24th, 2015. So I encourage you, if you are interested in continuing to have the opportunity for face-to-face learnings with colleagues in the association community, please consider taking a look. There is more information about this conference that's on the ASAE website. So with that, I will pause, and we have a few minutes if there are questions or comments. And I know we have a microphone, so I see a couple of hands. If those of you who have microphones. There's a hand right here and another one up in the front. And for my sake, because I don't know many of you, could you introduce your name and your organization, please?
Yes, Arlene, my name is V.K. Arora. I work for a company in Calcutta, and I have been associated with the CII, which is the Central Confederation of Indian Industries, and I've also been associated with a number of organizations which work for the mineral industry.
Thank you.
Now, what the members, when they come to these organizations, they expect that we should add value to the contribution which they are making to the organization. And at times there are certain policies of the government where they would like us to have an opinion and represent to them that this is favoring them or it's not favoring them.
I'm sorry, it's to, could you repeat the last?
I said that there are certain policies of the government which could be favoring some part of the members, and it could be against the interest of the other part of the members. Now, in a recent case, there was a problem. I give you a simple case that there's a strong lobby among the traders who have said that iron ore should be exported out of the country. And there are other people who are saying that iron ore should not be allowed to be exported out of the country because it is required to fuel the basic requirements of the steel industry in the country. Each of them has very valid arguments, and we are working in an association where there are members from this section and there are members from that section. Now, in such a situation where the interest of the members are going to be diametrically different from one section from the other, how do we, one way is that we keep quiet and we withdraw and say that we will not form an opinion. The second is that we take a national view and then take a call and then decide that this will be the view of the association in this matter, which could be definitely favoring one but not the other.
Yeah.
It requires a very bold stand. It requires a very mature handling. But could you tell us what would be better ways to handle this?
Well, I don't know that I can tell you what would be a better way to handle it, but I can give you a reaction to your comment and your question. One, I think associations have a responsibility to understand from members what their needs and interests are, and to also understand from the larger world in which we are functioning and operating what are the directions that things are heading. So when you say the national interest, if that diametric perspective within your membership is because, I don't know if it is, but if it's because some of your members are not accepting the directions that things are going in, and that might be the future of where things are headed, or might be for the greater good of the country or the society, then sometimes the role of an association can be to help provide education and help provide perspective. Also, there are times when within an association there may be an irreconcilable difference of perspective. And in those cases, if you've engaged your members and tried to come to some mutual understanding and that doesn't happen, then I think for organizations it's okay to sometimes reach a decision to say, we can't reach an agreement. Let's focus our energies on the things where we can agree and where we can help to move something forward, because if we spend a lot of our time and energy in the ongoing debate, we're not making a difference. So what are the things where we can agree and we can help to drive some change? So I hope that's helpful, and happy to talk more about that with you over the course of the next day and a half. And I would invite others who may have some thoughts as well. I see another hand.
Thank you, Arlene. This is Professor Aman Agarwal. I am the Vice Chairman for the Indian Institute of Finance based in Delhi and Greater Noida, and I'm Professor of Finance as well. I've had a short stint at the World Bank in DC as well for about 2 years, almost about 15 years back. Now, my question is regarding the online networks, which are also emerging as forms of association, which you rightly mentioned also. I remember almost about 20 years back, I was a core member of the team called the IRC. They were the IRC chat channels, which none of these groups which you mentioned were there in that present time. And we organized these meets in Delhi and in Chandigarh. And to our surprise, a 4-member team which we had, which organized these meets, we had almost a turn of about 35,000 plus and about 48,000 plus members in Delhi and Chandigarh. There was no end result coming out of those meets. There was no networking which was created. Even when I look at Facebook or LinkedIn and others, and when I've connected with my friends who were in school 25, 30 years back, despite they being in the same city in the vicinity of about 4 to 5 kilometers of my region, it's been 3 years, I have not been able to touch base with them over a cup of coffee. So I don't really know how solid in terms of the base of networking or an association setup do these online systems really pertain to or bring forth given the traditional ways of associations like the ones which you belong to or most of the members belong to have been there and have still been existing today. So I don't know if you can lay on some light, because my own personal experience has been that there is a lack of trust and confidence, which actually does not entail any movement further. Despite that you are connected and you see that you have 3,000 members on your network or you have 5,000 members, you actually do not even know one, and you can't even connect with one for even small work which needs to be done. Yeah. So given that, really, do you see these networks in any way coming up to some extent with the kind of associations which we have, where even if the members don't know, because of the platform of being your association or CIA or FICCI or VDMA or other member associations, they get that comfort level and the trust where they're able to move forward, multiple steps forward, as against any of these networks. Yeah. Thank you.
I think that's, if I understand your question, I think your point is well taken. You know, one of the values of face-to-face is you get to connect and you get a sense of the individual. In networks, one of the things that I've seen on virtual networks, online networks, happen well is somebody who has recognition and respect within the community, taking the lead to help post questions, to engage folks, to invite people into conversation. An example that we have underway in ASHA at this point in time is that we engage in strategic planning on a 3-year cycle. So we're in the process of updating what we call our envisioned future. And our president, who's very well known to our members, and some other leaders in our organization have posted questions on some of our online discussion threads to invite our members to weigh in response to specific questions about their thoughts of what is our desired future, what are the things in our field that we want to see happen, where do we want to be in 10 years. So we've tried to have, one, folks who have a lot of credibility and respect, and two, we've tried to come up with questions and topics that will be of interest to people. Now, that said, we're all wired a little bit differently, and so there's data within the online community world, and probably others here are more familiar with it than I am, that shows that there's always going to be, there's always going to be some folks who are going to be there and observing. There are going to be some who will comment periodically. There are going to be some who will be frequent participants in the conversation, and there'll be some who are actually creating the value. So the level of participation won't always be the same, but there is a growing body of information about strategies for using networks and online communities in an effective way. So I want to respect the time frame, and I'll end at this point except to say I will be here for the, do we have time for one more question? Is that okay?
I am Hashmukhlal Vora, President, Hindustan Chamber of Commerce, Chennai. I represent trade and industry. I am coming from pharma and chemical industry. We want to use network in 2 ways. One, for the improvement and increase of business, and second, to know the latest thing, development happening all over the world. How to get ourselves tuned to this type of job.
So if help me make sure that I understand, the question is about using networks to have information about latest developments and
doing business.
Doing business, and did I hear broadly around the world? So do you have counterpart organizations in other parts of the world? And has there been any outreach to those organizations to see if there's an opportunity to perhaps have communities that you have in common where you can share information with one another? That might be one initial idea that would come to my mind.
Okay. Thank you.
So I apologize for the limit that we have, but I look forward to the next day and a half and hopefully having many more conversations. And I hope this very brief overview of some trends that are affecting the world that we are all functioning in and that our members, affiliates, customers are functioning in is helpful. And I look forward to these conversations we'll be having, particularly as we talk about what is the value that we create and provide, and how do we support engagement. Thank you very much.